Your cells do a lot of very cool, very interesting, very important things, and they are essential for absolutely everything, but they also grow and age just like you do, and thus, therefore, they also die. And when cells die, some very interesting things can happen, so let's talk about those. So the first thing I'm going to mention is autophagy, and the word autophagy directly translates to self-eating, auto-self-phagy eating. There you go. So that is the process of your cells essentially eating themselves. So kind of the main reason for this is to recycle things that can still be recycled. So when your cell grows old and it eventually dies, there's still cellular components that can be reused, like sometimes, not really often organelles, but often biomolecules such as lipids and carbohydrates and proteins. They can be reused occasionally. So what happens is after the cell dies, there's these cleanup cells that come along and take up all of the things that can be recycled are recycled and used in other cells, things that cannot be recycled are degraded, and during degradation, it can either result in waste products that are just gotten rid of, yeeted, get out of here, or broken into other smaller molecules that may or may not be recycled. So if you have like an organelle can't be recycled, it gets broken down, and the stuff that can be recycled out of it, like proteins and lipids, are then reused. The stuff that can't is tossed in the trash. So most of the process of autophagy is done by lysosomes, which are an organelle that basically function to break down and recycle cellular components to be reused. But in order for autophagy to happen, the cells have to die first, and that happens through the process of apoptosis. So apoptosis is programmed cell death. So when a cell gets damaged or too old or stops functioning, it undergoes the process of apoptosis, where it just dies. So once apoptosis is triggered in the old or damaged cell, then the process conducts, and then it attracts phagocytes, which are special cells that do phagocytosis and engulf the damaged, dying apoptotic cell in order to deal with it. Inside the phagocytes, the cell undergoes autophagy, where all of the cellular components are digested and reused. So apoptosis is a regular, naturally occurring, essential part of cellular life. Everything that lives has to also die, and this helps deal with damaged and dying cells and avoid junk, and it also helps with avoiding cancers. But sometimes cells die when you don't really want them to, and that is called necrosis, which is uncontrolled, unwanted cell death. So while apoptosis is programmed cell death, necrosis is uncontrolled cell death, and you really do not want necrosis. So what necrosis is an uncontrolled dying off of your cells, where your cells just die and start rotting on your body. That can be caused by a variety of different things, including infections by bacteria, such as the ones that cause necrotizing fasciitis, or it can be caused by tissue damage and lack of blood flow, or extreme environmental conditions such as frostbite. So during necrosis, basically your cells are just dying and your tissue is also dying. And once the tissue is dead, it can no longer be revived or revitalized, so it just has to be removed due to like skin grafts or amputation. So not great. And eventually, if it goes unnoticed for long enough, such as like necrotizing fasciitis, infection due to bacteria can spread throughout the rest of your body, go systemic, and then you die. Now, necrosis can also cause a lot of problems because when the cell dies due to necrosis, the cell bursts, whereas in apoptosis, the cell doesn't burst, the plasma membrane is not ruptured, so all of these cellular components stay within the cell until they're engulfed by a phagosome. However, in necrosis, when the cell bursts, all of the cellular components are released into areas they're not supposed to be and can cause further damage due to like enzymes and pH changes and all that. It can cause a lot of problems, which then spread to other cells and cause them to undergo necrosis, and rinse and repeat, now your whole tissue is dying. So yeah, necrosis is not a very good time. It is generally something you want to avoid. Now, necrotic cells are not always 100% you're gonna die due to tissue damage and limbs are gonna rot off your body, your immune system can take care of it if it's at a small enough level. Your immune cells will be like, hey, these cells are not doing what they're supposed to, they're dying in a way that we don't like, let's go clean them up. However, there are cases where, such as like big tissue damage like burns or frostbite or something, or a nasty infection, it will lead to necrosis in a large enough area that your immune cells can't keep up, and that is what needs to have tissue removal and occasionally amputation. So your body can take care of small amounts of necrosis, just you don't want it to get too big. But yeah, there's some ways that your cells can die, whether it's on purpose or not on purpose, so be nice to your cells.